There is a new American administration. There is a new American president. Do you think that this is going to make anything any different here in this region?
She's talking about Joe Biden. I felt a tangible change from the new administration in its approach to all issues, specifically Palestinian issues. Bro, Yahya Sinwar was a lesser evil voter, dog. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. He's talking about Trump to Biden, chat. He was like, yeah, I'm riding with Biden. He seems like more tolerant and not as like crazy and bloodthirsty. Let's talk about Yahya Sinwar. Okay. Yahya Sinwar became the Politburo chief of Hamas, was already the leader of the military wing of Hamas, and is seen as the person who was most responsible for I don't want to use the term masterminding because I feel like a lot of people are going to say, oh, you're being fucking anti-Semitic or whatever the fuck. What's a better word than that? Coordinating the October 7 attacks on Israel. And yeah, the planner, the designer, the architect, yes, orchestrating. So there's the raw footage of Yahya Sinwar's last moments. This doesn't actually show any blood or anything, but Israel, weirdly enough, presented this, I think, because they thought, like, look how sick this is. Like, we killed him. He died. He's a loser. But the reality of the matter is that I think this will probably, I think this is like something that will backfire. Considering that it shows, it completely contradicts a lot of the messaging surrounding Yahya Sinwar and the way that he was presented to be like surrounded by 20 hostages that he's handcuffed to, and that he was in a tunnel structure always, like consistently hiding. And that's not the case at all. His arm is severed in the video. Yeah, his arm was shot off, I believe, by like the first artillery shell. I will give you the details of what happened, what took place 2 days ago, yesterday. But basically, there's constant 24/7 surveillance, and in that 24/7 surveillance within the Gaza Strip, they saw like a bunch of militants. The Israeli army saw a bunch of militants that they suspected, or maybe Palestinians, I don't know, being suspicious. That's enough to fucking attack them. But what is this?
Word to understand the Israeli psyche is fire. I'm Elon Gilad. I write about Hebrew and Jewish history. Let's take a look at the central concept of Israeliness, starting with its etymology. The word comes from the criminal jargon of Russia in the early 20th century, where it was used to mean non-criminal, and by extension, someone who may easily be exploited, a mark. The word comes from the Yiddish word fire, meaning a customer of a prostitute, a John, which itself probably comes from a German word meaning suitor. Now, this word arrived in Israel with Russian immigrants in the 1950s, where it took on a life of its own in Hebrew. The closest word in English to fire is sucker, but it's so much more. It's a cultural touchstone that reveals the heart of Israeli society. You see, in Israel, being a fire doesn't just mean you're easily fooled. It's more about missing the chance to cut corners, dodge rules, or get ahead by any means necessary. In a society where bending the rules is often seen as savvy, being a fire means you're the one who plays it straight. And that's not a compliment. In fact, being called a fire is one of the worst insults out there. Sociologists have noted that the concept of fire is closely linked to the Israeli national identity. To be Israeli in many ways is to be aware of the constant risk of being a fire, and to navigate life with the sharpness and savvy needed to avoid that fate. This mentality is seen as a defining feature of what it means to be Israeli, shaping everything from personal interactions to national policies. Now, you know?
What? It's not passing the smell test? What are you talking about? This guy is not like a random dude. This is a Jewish guy who writes about Hebrew and Jewish history. The fuck? Like, talking about culture in Israel. Where's time without an ovo when you need him? God damn. Talking about cultural undertones in Israeli society. I think is important to understand. I didn't know about this to begin with, but like something that we talked about, something that we talked about before is like the way that the Holocaust is viewed. The way that the Holocaust is viewed in Israeli society, and like what role it plays in understanding contemporary Israeli mindset. He's paraphrasing an article from '99 about this concept. Yeah, he's not like a fucking random person. Anyway, he's an editor and writer at Haaretz, who also, I didn't even know about this concept, but I kind of understand what he's saying. That like, but as far as like the militancy, for example, the militant attitudes baked into the way that never again is perceived by broader Israeli society. When you're building a nation, when you're creating a nationalist mythos, there are a lot of things that there are a lot of cultural perspectives that you point to, that you create. BM on Twitter retweeted this article. Yeah. Anyway. Colonizers think that dying is the worst fate and that dying fighting is dumb. If you can live as a slave, they have to believe that otherwise they can't rationalize themselves. So, Israel's release of Yahya Sinwar's final moments serves as propaganda to showcase strength and humiliate Palestinians, reflecting Israeli narcissism. While Israelis interpret his death as a victory, others see it as a symbol of resistance and martyrdom, highlighting different perspectives on life, sacrifice, and struggle. That's a pretty solid way to look at it. I think that a lot of people that watch the footage, I think a lot of people that watched the raw footage of this drone footage, like, when I saw it, I could not comprehend why they had released this. Especially considering that overall, the way that this played out is that they didn't even know that they actually ended up targeting and killing Yahya Sinwar. They thought that they were just targeting and killing random Palestinians. Basically, they see three people that they think are suspicious. Those three people scatter. There's like a firefight. One of them runs into this building. The building is shelled. Okay. Originally, I believe that the early reporting from Israeli media was that whoever it was in that building lobbed grenades. But then that could have been a mistranslation. I know that the grenades were involved, but I don't know if it was actually the person that was in the building, Yahya Sinwar, which we know now, or rather the people that were following him. Tank, not artillery. Yes, a tank shelled the building. They run away. Like the Israeli soldiers run away. Then they send in a drone. This is the drone footage. The suspicious figure, the bloodstain, and the shell to Building 42. New details about Sinwar's assassination. Israel confirms the IDF didn't find Sinwar. Sinwar found them. He emerged suddenly in plain view, shot through grenades. IDF troops got wounded and took cover in a building where he continued to throw sticks, rocks, and grenades while the IDF shelled the place from a distance. This is the article. Basically, what ends up happening in this process is this is the drone footage, and you'll see. He's right there, sitting with a keffiyeh over his head, in military fatigues, with a vest on, and you can kind of tell, even in this grainy footage, that his arm is gone. Like his one arm is just blasted off. They didn't know at the time that this was Yahya Sinwar. So they turn around once they identify that there's a militant in the room, okay, with the drone. They send the tank back, and the tank basically shells this area once again. And the next day, they're doing a sweep to see what they conducted, what the operation they conducted ended up looking like, and that's where they find the body of Yahya Sinwar. He recognizes the drone is there. He picks up a wooden stick and tosses in the direction of the drone. And then, here is the details. Then a tank and other troops arrived at the scene. At this point, Sinwar went up the second floor of the building where he was hiding, and a tank fired a shell at him. Sinwar was apparently wounded by the tank fire and lost his hand. After soldiers entered the building, he threw 2 grenades at them, and they rolled down the staircase. Soldiers retreated and used the drone to scan the building. Then the drone spotted a masked man with an injured hand. Sinwar saw the drone and threw a piece of wood at it. At this point, the tank fired another shell at him. Okay? Which I think that it is interesting that they presented this, like, it didn't make any sense to me that they like openly presented this, and I like in terms of this being like a massive W for the Israeli military. Of course, this is a very high profile target for them. This is the architect of October 7. This is the person that is the leader of the Al-Qassam brigades. A lot of people actually were very upset about the Gilad Shalit hostage negotiation and the hostage swap, where 1,000 Palestinians that were imprisoned by the Israeli state were allowed to be released for the return of one singular Gilad Shalit. One of those people was Yahya Sinwar. I've actually listened to, I believe his name is David Remnick, who even read his book and has talked about his background quite a bit. He had a conversation with Ezra Klein a while ago. But I guess I'll give you more details on his background after we talk about,
long before the attacks of October the 7th last year.
After we talk about like
Sinwar
the details surrounding the death of Yahya Sinwar.
the top of any notional Israeli target list. A former internal enforcer, a former prisoner in Israel, since 2017, the head of Hamas in Gaza.
Why would he be in the front lines, though? Does Hamas lack men now? I think that is one way to interpret the situation. And yes, Hamas's ranks have obviously been diminished in the last fucking 12 months of a genocide. But I think the other reason is that the other reason why he was in the front lines is because, one, all of Gaza is a front line, and two, at least in terms of like how he has always operated, he is not exactly a shy person. There are a lot of instances, I think, like where he's openly called for Israel to try and drone strike him as he like walked freely in the streets. But this is before October 7. I'm talking about. So it's not like he was he wasn't similar to the usual Politburo chiefs and the way that they are presented to mainstream media, like other Palestinian leadership that was oftentimes maybe even seen at odds with the immediate interests of Palestinians, that they are like wealthy, they live in Doha, they're far removed from the consequences of like Israel's violent actions, even though they are making these decisions, right? He, on the other hand, was always amongst the population. I will, of course, bring up Hind Hassan's interview with him, which I have literally watched before. Hind Hassan says, "This was my interview with Lama Al-Arian, documentary filmmaker, war reporter, Vice News, and NPR. It's his last ever on-camera interview. Everyone told us he was hiding, as it was just days after an assassination attempt during 11 days of Israeli bombardment in 2021. We found him walking down the street, so we stopped him and asked for an interview. We found him walking in Jabalia. After we introduced ourselves and asked for an interview, he said he would consider it and that he would be in touch. Later, Hamas contact got in touch with the team and arranged a time and location. The interview was for Vice News." So he was not the leader of the Al-Qassam brigades, for your information. That is Mohammed Daif. He was the political leader who wanted to be more involved militarily. Sorry. It is interesting, though, once again, we'll dive further into the background and into the mentality of Yahya Sinwar. I've read primarily Israeli reporting on him. Like, that's the most access that I have, because he wrote a book. He spent a big chunk of his life, 2 decades in Israeli prison. His primary responsibility for Hamas was to seek out collaborators. So, like, most of the people that he actually punished or killed were Palestinian before he went to Israeli prison. And and in Israeli prison, he basically learned a lot about Israel. One thing that you hear about him, one thing that you hear about him quite a lot from at least like Israeli people that are knowledgeable on these matters, is that one thing that I've heard so consistently, both from David Remnick and many other people in Israel, is that they always say Yahya Sinwar understood us, as in Israeli society, better than we could ever understand Palestinians. Like, that is, and these are not people who like him, okay? These are not like people who are pro Yahya Sinwar. They're saying that as someone who learned Hebrew in Israeli prison, as someone who translated many Hebrew works into Arabic and even wrote his own book as well, if someone who was friends with an Israeli dentist during his time in Israeli prison, like, there are a lot of people. He was more accessible to the average Palestinian than many other people in the Hamas leadership structure, and he was also more accessible to even Israeli people as well.
Born in southern Khan Yunis to Palestinian refugee parents, he was 25 at the time of the first Intifada, or uprising, in 1987.
Yeah, he was born in 1962 to a refugee camp, by the way, a refugee camp that still very much exists, by the way, even though Israel basically destroyed it. So, like, that gives you a little bit of a better understanding of, like, the terms and conditions into what Yahya, the world that Yahya Sinwar came into.
Recruited to the newly formed Hamas, quickly becoming its chief enforcer, punishing, killing Palestinians suspected of collaborating with Israel. In 1989, he was convicted by Israel for the abduction and killing of 2 Israeli soldiers and the murder of 4 Palestinians. He spent 22 years as an Israeli prisoner, even giving interviews in fluent Hebrew. Studying Israeli society, media, politics, the better he had it to attack and undermine them. His then interrogator telling us today that he was never in doubt about the threat he posed.
I'm really glad that he's dead.
Yeah, his interrogators thought he was a highly dangerous person when he was in prison. He tells interrogators he's going to remember all their faces. He also learned Hebrew while in prison, yes.
Because it's very important, and believe me, I know him, to the whole world, not only to the Israel state, to the whole world, because his dream was to kill Israeli Jews and infidels. That was his big dream.
I think that's a bastardization. I don't think that second part is correct.
In 2011, he was one of more than 1,000 Palestinian prisoners released in exchange for the captured Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit. Doctrinaire.
It's interesting because while he was in Israeli prison, he was scheming, right? While he was in Israeli prison, he was scheming to figure out a way to do like a hostage negotiation already. Like to potentially like do a prison break, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And he was one of the primary parties in the negotiations process. He was a primary. He was a principal negotiator. Like he played a role in this hostage swap that occurred with Gilad Shalit.
Long opposed to the Oslo peace process, with the aim of eradicating Israel and reclaiming all of Palestine, he established himself as a chief strategist, boosting ties with Iran. In 2015, he was defined by the US government as a specially designated global terrorist. His seniority within Hamas was cemented in 2017 when he became its Gaza chief, changing the power balance in favor of its military wing. The same year, Hamas issued an updated charter suggesting it would accept an interim Palestinian state alongside Israel. Sinwar entering into what some saw as an unspoken arrangement with Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel allowing Qatari funding for Gaza in the hope of containing Hamas and maintaining the division between it and the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. But as October the 7th proved, and his speech nearly a year before it suggested, Sinwar was still planning a major attack.
We will come to you, God willing, in a roaring flood. We will come to you with an endless number of rockets. When
did he say this? 2017?
We will come to you with an endless number of rockets. We will come to you in a flood of soldiers without limit. We will come to you with millions of our nation, tide after tide.
With the Al-Aqsa flood, as he called last year's attack, killing 1,200 Israelis and capturing 200...
2022. It was 2 years ago.
50. Okay. Sinwar dealt Israel a military humiliation and a deep psychological wound. But it also brought an unprecedented Israeli response, laying waste to Gaza, killing thousands of civilians and destroying much of Hamas's military capacity and now all of its top-level leadership.
This, according to the IDF, is the moment a tank fired on the building Sinwar was holed up in.
Hasan, looking back now, don't you think that it was Gazans' misfortune that Sinwar got released, considering the state of Gaza now under his leadership? Well, considering prior to his release that Gaza wasn't exactly looking too great, and even after his release, Gaza isn't looking too great, and that the responsible party for Gaza's demise is always going to be the occupying state, the sovereign state of Israel. No, I don't think that his release, because I don't think that his release plays a role in what Gaza looks like, considering that, you know, Israel has historically almost always occupied it and has controlled everyday existence in Gaza. I'm not a believer that, I am not a personal believer that like October 7 is when this history unfolded or history happened, and that there was nothing prior to that. And that's precisely the reason why many people will say that you cannot kill an idea. The people will always yearn for emancipation. That's a totally normal, totally understandable, totally human position to have. And that's precisely the reason why, for example, Hassan Nasrallah's assassination by Israel has not changed the dynamic with Hezbollah still very much fighting against the Israeli incursion into Lebanon, because it has nothing to do with the leadership unless you personally think that like these guys have the capacity to brainwash, millions of people and are just like mind controlling them somehow into resisting against the state of Israel, and that it's not coming out of a normal, very human place of wanting to not live under the ruthless, cruel, brutal military occupation of a settler colony historically that has dominated them, humiliated them, pushed them into a corner with no other way out. That's the reason why I wanted to look at this Vice coverage from 2021, which is, of course, prescient, considering the way that, once again, Gaza looks in 2021, far before October 7. And this is one of the last Western interviews that Yahya Sinwar ever gave. I've watched this video on stream before. I think I might have watched it multiple times. But having said that, I think it'll help you develop a deeper understanding of the experiences that Palestinians go through and where it stems from.
And this is the Bizlash brigade of soldiers who killed him, operating in that area on the day.
Like, this place is nothing. This changes like not a lot in terms of the way that Israel is behaving either. I disagree with this perspective because October 7th happened, the death toll accelerated. Saying that Sinwar's release was not unfortunate for them seems divided from the reality. Even though it's Israel's doing the atrocities of October 7th, form of resistance could have been viewed as an unfortunate miscalculation. This way out that's being played out now seems worse, especially if things go back to apartheid anyway. I'm not Palestinian. I don't live in Gaza. I don't I can't speak on I guess like the broader analysis beyond the fact that I don't feel comfortable placing the blame of a violent settler colony that has killed and displaced tens of millions of Palestinians. I don't feel like it's appropriate to lay the blame in the hands of anyone that is resisting against their own brutal occupation. Like, you can't. It's like saying the Warsaw ghetto uprising is responsible for the Holocaust. That's a ridiculous argument to make. It's not a correct argument to make. It is completely, it's antithetical to everything I believe. This is such a bad take. I can't. Yeah. Especially because you're hyper focusing, chatter. You're hyper focusing on a singular person and not the broader concept of humiliating and destroying the lives of millions of people. And I think that you can't have that opinion unless you legitimately think it was this singular person that like mind controlled people into acting this way. You know what I mean? Like, no, I think that it is a understandable position that people will have when their lives have been ruthlessly dominated by this settler colony. That's it. Right? Earlier this month, I read Ezra Klein's interview with Franklin Ford, the author of the recent sweeping article in The Atlantic, looking back at the Biden administration's Gaza policy, in which Ford made an interesting claim about Biden's red line on Rafah in March. Okay, we'll look at this later. So, like every kind of conversation that we have about Yahya Sinwar or any kind of resistance against Israel has to be within the framework of like how we got here. Because many people, I think many people personally think like, oh no, these guys are just like ruthless barbarians and they just want to kill Jews and that's why they are in this position and that's why they did what they did. And that's just objectively incorrect. I think I've done enough commentary on that front. I mean, it's pretty illogical and mostly Islamophobia that is the missing puzzle piece for you to make to this leap. Especially when you think about like fundamentalists and how they came to power within Palestinian governance. Those guys are seen as like the less corruptible forces, but ultimately they were the only game in town for quite a while. And that was a miscalculation, I think, from the Israeli government as well, because they definitely played a significant...
The Tel Satan neighborhood, Rafah, southern Gaza. Israeli soldiers have stumbled on the country's most wanted man. A gunfight had ensued. A tank shelled the building. Then a drone is sent in. It picks up Sinwar sitting in an armchair still alive. Looks like a hand is missing. Eyes on the approaching machine. The last act of armchair aggression from the man who planned the death of so many, throwing a stick at a UAV.
But yeah, this completely cuts against like all of the Israeli propaganda that was conducted on this matter, presenting Yahya Sinwar as like an out of touch with the devastation that he was responsible for post October 7. A careless, bloodthirsty monster that doesn't care about however many Palestinians die in the process. Because it directly cuts against that when he, died fighting all the way till his last breath. So that is the reason why I didn't fully understand why they showed this drone footage. Maybe they were like really excited. Maybe they were just like really fucking excited about the prospect of like showcasing Yahya Sinwar as like dead.
The Israelis released pictures of items they say were found with the body, from suitably sinister to mawkish and mundane. Cash, bullets, ID papers, Mentos. Also a map of what's reported to be a tunnel network. Along with Sinwar's brother Mohammed, Khalil al-Hayya is a candidate for the next leader of Hamas. Today, thought to be in Qatar, eulogized Sinwar and ruled out an imminent release of hostages in Gaza.
Those prisoners will not return to you until the aggression on our people in Gaza is stopped and full withdrawal from it, and release our heroes, the prisoners, from the occupation jails. And we continue with the Hamas...
Oh no, Sinwar was an everyday carry Reddit guy. Yeah, his everyday carry always featured Mentos. That is real, by the way. Like I think he really liked Mentos. That was the thing.
101 hostages are still being held in Gaza, at least half of them thought to be still alive. Their friends and family took to the streets of Tel Aviv again today.
Here in Israel, we don't celebrate the elimination of our enemies. We celebrate when our loved ones come back home.
At Hostages Square, we met the cousin of Carmel Gat. The occupational therapist was one of a group of 6.
By the way, this video bites the entire Israeli project in Gaza in the ass. They can use a drone to go into a building and easily find one quote-unquote terrorist. And why the fuck are they dropping 2,000 bombs all over the place? Well, the thing is, they literally lucked into finding him, too. They didn't even kill him as, like, the high-profile target. Like, I think it also further demonstrates the incompetence, even with the motherfucking American military's surveillance tools at their disposal. It was never about Hamas, and this video very inadvertently shows that Israel's admitting to this. Yeah, it's not like they droned that area. That drone most likely is not even fucking fashioned by the IDF. A lot of those soldiers go and buy their own personal drones. They do GoFundMes and shit because they don't want to get into like direct conflict. They don't want to get into direct combat. So they like oftentimes use drones to surveil it beforehand. Those are not like standard, those drones are not even like standard operation drones. They usually literally go and get those drones on their own. Yeah. You're lying? Yes, 100%. The thing is, Israel does have incredible precision striking capabilities, of course. But overall, the German progressives' view on this is so skewed. At a talk in my uni, they disavow BDS, showed the Grand Mufti, and you know who, and said that it showed all Palestinians are anti-Semitic, saying never again applies to Gaza because of Holocaust is a Holocaust denial. Okay, yeah, I don't want to hear from Germans. Thinking about the words of Che, I know you've come to kill me. Shoot, coward. You are only going to kill a man. Yeah.
6 hostages murdered in Gaza's tunnels back in August. DNA found at the scene indicated that Sinwar had also been in the area, possibly using Carmel and the others as human shields.
Some people...
Oh my God, come on, dog. Like, bro, they killed him alone. Like, they killed him alone, and they're like, but he might have actually had hostages with him. It's like, dude, you can't fucking package this up as a human shield narrative when, like, the fucking drone footage contradicts that. What the fuck do you mean? That's crazy. Okay, there were no human shields. There were no human shields there, but I'm going to imagine them being there anyway is a wild fucking assessment to make. But I think it goes to show like the attitude that a lot of people have about this stuff. They're just like, they would rather hallucinate a different reality than the one that they are even presenting to you immediately. Right? Like that argument in and of itself is also stupid. It's like, yeah, he had a bunch of hostages with him, which is why we shot him with a tank. Because that's the level of care we have for our own hostages that we want to return.
In the government in Israel wants to go on fighting forever and to keep on fighting, even though we eliminated Sinwar, even though we have a chance to get the hostages back. We need to focus on what's important, and most of the Israelis think exactly what I think. They think that the most important thing is the hostages, and if we miss this chance,
I don't fully agree with that. I don't think most of the Israelis, I mean, a lot of Israelis do want the hostages back, but I wouldn't say that most of the Israelis are not celebrating Yahya Sinwar's death. Like, I don't agree with that. Most of Israeli society was like basically packed up when Netanyahu threw a bone to the Lebanon invasion camp. Like, they literally fucking stopped the hostage conversations that were getting really heated inside of Israel. If you remember, like, I don't think this person is a bad person, for the record. Like, especially in comparison to you know, how some in the Israeli society view this entire situation. I think it's a little bit naive on the other hand, especially when you see this kind of shit all the time. While celebrating the death of Yahya Sinwar, Israelis at Mahana Yehuda Market in Jerusalem sing the new unofficial Israeli anthem, May Your Village Burn. And meanwhile, it's not, for those, I guess, maybe not, he might be naive, but let me tell you something, okay? There are plenty of fucking overtly idiotic people, especially in American media, that immediately went, oh, well, Yahya Sinwar is dead. Now, I guess, like, Israel can finally do a ceasefire. And it's like, no, dog, they fucking have been bombing today. They haven't stopped bombing Gaza. So what happened? So what happened? Surely they'll stop any moment now. Is only a position you can arrive at if you are the dumbest fucking rube of all time.
Golden hour to get the hostages back, we can only blame ourselves.
Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Sinwar's death doesn't mean the end of the war in Gaza.
Never mind. Okay, well, there you have it. Oops. I guess not. Yeah. Let's pack this up, guys. Never mind.
Now, of course, other fronts have opened. The funeral today of one of 5 Israeli soldiers killed in southern Lebanon on Wednesday fighting Hezbollah. Some of those injured were first brought to this hospital in Haifa, northern Israel. What happened in southern Lebanon on Wednesday has somewhat got lost with the news of Sinwar's death yesterday, but it's significant. 5 Israeli soldiers killed, many injured. They were from the Golani unit, and what's important about that is that colleagues of theirs also from that brigade were killed in a drone strike by Hezbollah earlier in the week. Also today, 2 gunmen dressed in military uniform cut through a border fence and entered Israel from Jordan. They were killed by Israeli soldiers. The IDF are searching the area around the Dead Sea for a possible 3rd gunman who got away. A reminder that even with the death of the man who let this conflict's genie out of the bottle, the possibility of escalatory action can come in forms and from places no one is ready for.
There's also little hope in Lebanon that Sinwar's death will mean the end of the conflict there. Hezbollah says it is escalating its war against Israel. There's been no let-up in the IDF's airstrikes across South Lebanon, and the UN says its peacekeeping mission has suffered several deliberate attacks by Israel in recent days. Our international editor, Lindsay Hilsum, is live in Beirut.
Alex, all day long, the Americans and the Israelis have been talking about the death of this one man, Yahya Sinwar. But you know, it looks a little different here because everybody remembers that all of his predecessors as leaders of Hamas were also killed by the Israelis. It's almost in the job description. And it didn't destroy Hamas. So people here don't think it's really going to make that much difference. It also doesn't address the fundamental problem, which is that there is no peace process to deal with the fact that Israel is occupying Palestinian land. Similarly here, they killed Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah. Of course that weakens the organization, but it hasn't stopped Hezbollah from fighting.
She's awesome. This is my favorite fucking... She's my favorite, dude. Hezbollah! I love this lady. Hezbollah! Yahya Sinwar! And Hezbollah! Lebanon. Hezbollah is still very much in operation in Lebanon. The CC gave up. Look at the closed captioning. They say Hizbah. She's breaking the fucking closed captioning, dog.
And we understand that the fighting is quite fierce down on the border. Nor does it address the fundamental problem of the enmity between Hezbollah's patrons, Iran, and Israel. So that's why very few people here think that what the Americans want will happen. Very few people think that this is going to be a turning point in this conflict. So much for Western leaders' dreams of peace. Today, the Israeli military released footage of their troops operating in southern Lebanon and claimed victories.
There is great damage. An entire chain of command is being wiped out. Hezbollah is hiding its fatalities. It is hiding dead commanders.
But Hezbollah is still firing rockets and announced today a new and escalating phase in the confrontation with the Israeli enemy. Those fighting Israel do not believe the Jewish state's ambitions will be satisfied by the killing of the Hamas leader.
They have this bigger plan for the Middle East, the whole Middle East. And that's what Netanyahu said bluntly when he said that we need to establish a new Middle East order. So the Hezbollah will keep fighting, and that's why I believe that this battle would be longer than we expect. It wouldn't stop at with the killing of Sinwar, nor with a ceasefire in southern Lebanon.
3,000 kilometers and a world away, President Biden was meeting European leaders. Cue optimism, some might say wishful thinking, about Israel turning from war to diplomacy and the Jewish state's weakened enemies realizing that their time is up.
The death of the leader of Hamas represents a moment of justice. He had the blood of Americans and Israelis, Palestinians and Germans and so many others on his hands. I told the Prime Minister of Israel yesterday, let's also make this moment an opportunity to seek a path to peace, a better future in Gaza without Hamas.
Back in southern Lebanon, UN peacekeepers can do little but distribute aid to villagers who have defied Israeli orders to leave their homes.
Thank God we're alive. There's a lot of bombing and we keep running from place to hide.
Israeli troops have damaged UNIFIL's base in an attempt to drive them away from the border. The Italian Prime Minister...
An insane statement. Like that right there, directly a war crime. Not just any kind of war crime. The one that counts, right? Because it's done against white people. The entire purpose of that base sitting there is to put white bodies in the direct line of fire of Israel to be like, yeah, we're not. We can't, they won't go this far. Nope.
visiting Lebanon today, says the UN peacekeeping force, which includes Italians, should stand their ground.
This is why I repeat that I consider targeting UNIFIL unacceptable, and I ask once again that all parties strive to ensure that all times the safety of each of these soldiers is guaranteed.
This was weird.
Today, they buried 13 people killed in Israeli strikes on the southern Lebanese town of Nabatea. The death of the Hamas leader is cause for neither joy nor despair here. They are engulfed by their own grief.
Lindsay Hilsum in Beirut. Now, Alan Pincus was Israel's consul general in New York and is now a columnist for the Haaretz newspaper. I spoke to him earlier and began by asking if this should be a moment for peace.
Israel should announce a unilateral ceasefire, demand a hostage exchange in order to maintain that ceasefire, see how their reaction is, but for all intents and purposes, declare that the war is over. But that won't happen.
What will happen?
The IDF will not retreat, will not withdraw. Mr. Netanyahu, the prime minister, does not see this as an isolated arena, but rather part of a major, bigger war that extends now into Lebanon with Hezbollah and also directly with Iran. So in his mind, a ceasefire in Gaza would not achieve anything.
But it's playing well for him at home, isn't it?
He is doing better, Alex, than you would have expected. The pager attack on the military leadership of Hezbollah in Lebanon, the assassination of Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah, the assassination or the killing of Yahya Sinwar in Gaza. So people feel rejuvenated. However,
the hostages, that's the other side of this. The hostages. No progress there.
In fact, there could be a regression there. And I know this is a very grave and grievous and hard, difficult thing to say. There is a higher likelihood, Alex, of hostages being executed rather than being released right now, because
like, not all of them, but he's not even wrong about that. Like he's imagining it. They haven't said that they would do so, especially because it's their only form of leverage. No, not by the IDF, dude. No, not by the IDF. The wild part about it is that it's not even fucking leverage. It's just not leverage. You know what I mean? Like, it's not. Israel does not see it as leverage. In the eyes of the Israeli state, it's just not. They don't give a fuck. And there's not really much you can do in that situation. 12 months. They don't care. The Israeli government openly sees the hostages as a burden.
Hamas essentially splinters now into gangs of terrorists with no chain of command and no accountability.
We don't know who to talk to if we wanted to talk peace.
We do have someone to talk to. You don't need to talk to Hamas. You don't need to talk to the Palestinians in Gaza. There was a plan made by President Biden. It is being rekindled as we speak. I don't know that Israel will agree to it. To an inter-Arab force under the auspices of the U.S., perhaps.
Oh, God. I fucking hate this so much. Like, that part is so fucking gross, dude. Yeah, let those fucking Arabs deal with these other fucking Arabs, you know? How is this anything but settler colonialism revisited, you know? Or not even settler colonialism, direct colonialism. Yeah, get the colonial subjects to be fucking dealt with by the appropriate vizier that we appoint to the position of power. That's just crazy. That's crazy. That's what we used to do that. The last time we were doing that was in fucking history books, man. That's wild. Here, we will appoint, like, we will designate and appoint a higher version of fucking Arab to deal with the lower version of Arab in Palestine, and it'll be fine.
Maybe the UN that would enter Gaza, provided that Israel withdraws. So there is a way to fill that vacuum. I just don't see it happening.
How do we even begin now to get this going when neither side will entertain a two-state solution?
There is this conventional wisdom or prevailing thinking that it is null, void, unviable, unfeasible, what have you. The thing is that the people who keep on saying that the two-state solution is no longer viable should owe us intellectually and politically an explanation on what do they think is possible.
Endless war.
Asal Arad says, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is considering a post-war plan for Ukraine based on ideas developed by Russia. See how ridiculous it sounds? The future of Gaza should not be decided by Palestinians. The future of Gaza should be decided by Palestinians, not the state that occupies them or the one that arms and funds their occupation. Yeah. Now let's get back to Hind Hassan, who interviewed Yahya Sinwar.
وقفت على الشباك على البلكونه بطلع بقول وين الناس اللي كانت هان؟ وين اهلي اللي كانوا هان؟ ايش اللي صار؟ احنا في حلم ولا علم؟ زهقت ما قدرتش صعقت نفسي راح خلص مش قادر اتحمل. بدي افهم انا ايش اللي عملنا.
Abu Salim's brother wasn't so lucky. He was buried under the rubble of their home for 12 hours. He's still in the hospital receiving treatment.
ماشي شد حيلك يلا
بإذن الله.
يلا ماشي تغير له هنا يلا يلا.
How are you feeling right now?
والله تعبان جسمي تعبان مرهق صدري في شعر في كسر هنا.
Who did you lose?
أبويا وأمي وأختي.
Hindasan and Lama Al Arian.
أخويا الكبير مرت أخويا ومرتي وابني البكر وابني الثاني 16 سنة وبنتي وابن أخويا وبنت أخويا ومرت ابن أخويا وطفل 3 شهور وولاد عمي 2 وولاد عمي
3 younger cousins, children.
بنات ابن
My
عمي.
cousin's daughters.
جريمة
This is a crime.
جريمة
A crime.
جريمة عشان إيش؟ إحنا
This is a war. This war sucks, but it's like a religious war, so it won't end until one side wipes the other out. Yeah, totally. That's not the case, chatter. I don't know if you're fucking, memeing or not, but do you think that maybe the people who call you anti-Semitic are just receiving a lot of hate from outside of your community, but because you guys advocate for Palestinians, that it all gets wrapped together? I'm sure that's part of it. Yes. And there are people in this community that are also sending hate towards both Ethan and everyone else that they perceive as being in support of Israel. The problem is, if you're not in support of Israel, then say so and don't center the conversation around people that are yelling at you because they perceive you as being in support of Israel, because that is a cycle that literally turns around and ends up justifying what those people, not saying that I'm justifying it, but in their minds, it ends up justifying what they were saying to begin with. Like, it should not. This is something that I say all the time from my own personal experience. Naysayers and people who yell at you for being, for not sufficiently being pro-Palestine. Okay? People yell at me about that too. People yell at me all the time about that. Has that changed the dynamic? Have I spent a lot of time? When I left the DNC, the day before I got kicked out for being fucking too pro-Palestinian, okay, there was a person outside the DNC who knew who I was and yelled at me. He said, "You're a fucking traitor." I walked up to him in the moment. I got heated. I went straight to his face. And I said, "What the fuck are you talking about? You think I'm your enemy? I'm not your enemy." People in my community wanted to yell at him. I went back and I told them not to do so. Because at the end of the day, while his anger towards me was misguided, his heart was in the right place. Because he was still outside of the DNC protesting against the Democratic Party for funding and facilitating a genocide. Okay? That's it. That is the attitude that I expect from every single person. If I can do it, you can too. Okay? I'm so moved by what you said the other day about Motaz. Could I say this to Motaz's face? Is what I'm doing right by him? This is the way. Look to our screen. Hear this man's words. How do we do right by this man than those he's lost? Exactly.
ايش بنعمل؟ لازم هذه المحاكمة تكون أمام العالم كله. يجيبوا واحد في البيت كان حامل مسدس.
Can you think of a future? What do you think of the future right now?
Inshallah.
We will rebuild our house and remain in our home. May God grant us patience with the good and the painful memories. I'm going to skip certain parts of this now because, as you might have understood, the situation is identical to what it was pre-October 7 as it is to post-October 7. The only difference, of course, post-October 7 is that the carnage and the destruction and the scale and magnitude has gotten unimaginably worse. So here's the part that I think is important.
We saw the leader of Hamas earlier today. And so again, they want to send a message to the world that Hamas is in control of Gaza and that the leaders are not in hiding.
Yes. So this is, again, from 2021. This is after a 2-week-long bombing campaign that Biden personally ended with a singular phone call to Benjamin Netanyahu. They see Yahya Sinwar walking down the street, as he is known to do. They asked, just days after an assassination attempt on him, he's walking around on the street. They ask, can we do an interview with you? He says, I'll get back to you. And then he says, yes.
In public, Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar is defiant. He spent 22 years in prison for killing 2 Israeli soldiers and has survived multiple assassination attempts.
We've just received a phone call from the office of Yahya Sinwar, who's the leader of Hamas. Now, he very rarely gives interviews, especially on camera, so we're headed over there now to see whether he'll talk to us.
You had a long list of demands for Israel for you to stop firing rockets. And those lists of demands included for Israeli police and forces to leave Al-Aqsa, for the people in Sheikh Jarrah, for their homes to be protected.
Now, this is important to contextualize because Hamas rockets, if you ask pre-October 7, if you ask mainstream media coverage, if you ask Israeli society, Hamas rockets are unprompted, right? They're just like violent barbarians who are lobbing rockets over the fucking Gaza boundary into Israel, and it is relentless, it's merciless, and there is no reason for it. Now, this, of course, like Hind Hassan's framing of this question, okay, will perhaps help you understand it if you didn't catch it. Most of those rockets are an act of retaliation after the leadership structure of Hamas, for political reasons too, by the way, because they want to present themselves as different from the Palestinian Authority in the eyes of the Palestinian public in the West Bank. Those rockets come after threats made by Hamas to stop Israel, and those are reasonable demands, by the way, to stop Israel from brutalizing Palestinians in either Sheikh Jarrah, which was the neighborhood in contest in 2021 that Israel was like mercilessly conducting occupation campaigns on, or beating the shit out of people who are making the trek to Al-Aqsa Mosque to pray. It's not a mistake that this always happens in the same time every fucking year. In the West Bank and in Jerusalem, Israel brutalizes Palestinians severely. They do this as a way to remind them that Israel occupies this land. This has happened every single year, way before October 7, 2023. Okay? Hamas tells them not to do so. They do it anyway, and then they lob rockets, and then Israel turns around and conducts a campaign that they call mowing the lawn. That's what it's called. Okay? This is important context to understand. Just like the top of the hour comes at the top of every hour, you have to understand that context as well. You no longer want to see those ads. All you need to do is subscribe, which you can do for free with a Twitch Prime. Here's the 3-minute ad break now. Let's continue.
And also for the blockade of Gaza to be lifted. None of these have actually been guaranteed to you. Are you committed to this ceasefire?
Of course, conducted far before October 7. There is no way that any Western journalist could enter Gaza post October 7. So,
Allegations of war crimes.
also, there's no building standing in Gaza, so that could maybe clue you in on this. Iran is precise. Hezbollah is precise. They target military. Yeah. Well, not because of some like moral reason. It's just logical. Hello? It's logical. Random civilians aren't the ones that are directly killing you. It's soldiers that are killing you. So yeah, if given the opportunity, if you were like, oh, would you target a military base or would you target civilians? Yeah, of course they would target the military bases. Israel, which possesses a complete arsenal of weaponry, state-of-the-art equipment, and aircraft, intentionally bombs and kills our children and women. And they do that on purpose. You can't compare that to those who resist and defend themselves with weapons that look primitive in comparison. If we had their capabilities to launch precision missiles that targeted military targets, we wouldn't have used the rockets that we did. Does the world expect us to be well-behaved victims while we are getting killed? For us to be slaughtered without making a noise? That's impossible.
The bombs have stopped falling in Gaza, but for people like Abu Sabhi, the crisis isn't over. His wife's condition is deteriorating, but with time running out, they receive good news.
We've just received the news that Diana has been given permission to leave Gaza, to go to Ramallah and receive urgent care, and her family are now just running around trying to sort out the last-minute paperwork.
Yeah, also important context, note that Sinwar was born in a refugee camp. He died 60-ish years old. The refugee camp he was born in, Khan Yunis, the very camp that has been attacked in the past year. It's been up for 60 years. Is that normal for a refugee camp? Yeah.
الآن 3 إسعافات من غزة لإيرز ومن إيرز لقلنديا ومن قلنديا لمستشفى 3 إسعافات. مستشفى الهلال رحمة هو بياخذها من جوا.
الله يسهل طريقي.
Wait, so Israel is allegedly stopping innocent pilgrims to the Al-Aqsa Mosque even before October 7? That sounds super illegal, not gonna lie. Oh, man. Yeah. Days after being transported to another hospital outside of Gaza, Diana Ziad Abu Al-Uf died from her wounds on June 3rd. She was 45 years old. I think this is where he talks about
Israel
George
says
Floyd.
that it weakened Hamas in this war in Gaza and that it reached a lot of its military objectives, which include...
Isn't that interesting? Again, pre-October 7, Israel mows the lawn, kills a fuck ton of civilians, and then says, we weakened Hamas. One phone call from Biden. And they pack it up and they say, we weakened Hamas. We reached our military objectives.
Included hitting Hamas tunnels, your police headquarters and security posts. What did you gain from this war?
They're in
this conflict, the Israelis' propaganda machine vigorously spread blatant lies. They were always saying that they have a bank of targets to strike, but during the 11 or 12 days of fighting, they didn't have any worthwhile targets except for infrastructure, civilians, towers, and houses. The occupation failed tremendously. The damage to our tunnels wasn't above 5%.
There is a new American administration. There is a new American president. Do you think that this is going to make anything any different here in this region?
She's talking about Joe Biden. I felt a tangible change from the new administration in its approach to all issues, specifically Palestinian issues. Bro, Yahya Sinwar was a lesser evil voter, dog. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. He's talking about Trump to Biden, chat. He was like, yeah, I'm riding with Biden. He seems like more tolerant and not as like crazy and bloodthirsty. In its approach, he's saying the Biden administration is different, especially Palestinian issues. The bias towards Israel is less than what it was in the previous administration. Boy, was he wrong. However, there is still a huge bias in the U.S. administration. Unfortunately, the recent statements from Secretary of State Anthony Blinken over supporting Fatah over Hamas aim to separate us and keep us divided. This is inappropriate behavior. We believe that the required action from the new U.S. administration must be different. All we ask of the U.S., we can read. No, dumbass. There's plenty of people who are listening, or some people can't fucking read because they're watching on mobile. Suck my dick. All we ask of the U.S. administration and the world is to make Israel follow international laws and international resolutions. That's all we want.
When we were in Jerusalem, we were watching.
The fuck is going on? Bro, every goddamn day, every damn day, there's got to be a new goddamn thing, dude. Holy shit. Every day, brother. Every day. Every day. Luckily, it happened at 6 p.m. today. It's not even, this time it's internet related. My internet is cutting in and out, and I don't know why. And it's fine too on my end. Like this time it's not even directly my internet. Like my internet is fine. I have 36.9 megabits per second upload. Okay? No, it's not even Spectrum. This is a Twitch server side issue. No, this is a Twitch server side issue. This is not my fault. My Spectrum internet is fine. I'm looking at it right now. I'm monitoring my upload speed. I'm looking at my upload speed, and it is pretty fucking good. On the other hand, however, I keep dropping frames to 0 for seemingly no reason. It goes down to 0 on my OBS. Is dropping a shit ton of frames. I don't know what to do. But my internet is consistently high. Oh. Go into the settings and use a new server. It's been happening to a lot of streamers. I can't change servers midway through the stream, chatter. Yeah, you can't swap servers. Other streamers are fucking up for me too. It's patchy for now. Hold on. 36 upload is pretty low. Dude, what are you talking about? I need 6,000 bit rate. I need 6,000 max. I need 6 megabits, maybe a little bit higher than that. You're wrong. Really should do that Intel CPU BIOS and microcode update, brother. It's not. It might be a Twitch related thing. I have full blown internet. And on my internet, I'm looking at my fucking upload. It is consistent. Man, this shit is so fucking annoying. It's more annoying when my internet doesn't actually go out, so I can see all of the chatters be like, nah, dog, you're wrong. everything that you are seeing, everything that you're seeing is incorrect. It's like, how are you going to tell me that things that I am literally monitoring on my end that you have no access to do what you did yesterday and buy a new one? No. Yeah, I think the new Windows update fucked everything. But I don't know if this is the 2H24 or 24H2 update fucked everything up. But I do think this is a Twitch-wide issue and not like I think this is a Twitch-wide issue and not necessarily an issue on my end. Even though no, it's not a DDoS. I'm going to continue.
Watching the war happening. We were watching Gaza being bombarded. And then the IDF, they tweeted on the internet, they said, we're attacking Gaza from the ground. And then there were rumors of a briefing that journalists were told that there was a ground invasion. And as a result of that, we heard that Hamas was tricked into going inside tunnels, and then they were bombed by Israel, and you suffered a lot of losses. Is this true? Did this happen?
The military operation that Israeli Defense Forces Chief of Staff Aviv Kochavi planned for and was deceptive and blatantly lied about with the Israeli army to the global media. Wait a minute. Israel lied about its military operation? That's crazy. Stop. With these claiming that there was a ground invasion to lure our fighters into the tunnels so they can bomb them from the air to suffocate them within those tunnels. The Izz al-Din al-Qassam Brigade's intelligence department discovered that their deception from the first moment, and all our fighters were stopped from going into the tunnels on the front lines. And all of our troops who already were there were ordered to withdraw. And the occupation's planes, which had concussive bombs designed to destroy tunnels, those bombs fell on empty tunnels and areas, and not a single fighter was killed. This proves the absolute failure of that army and how its efforts are futile. Israel tried to use the media and committed a major moral crime by manipulating and exploiting them during the war, instead of mobilizing actual troops. And I want to take this opportunity to remember the racist murder of George Floyd. George Floyd was killed as a result of a racist ideology held by some people. The same type of racism that killed George Floyd is being used by Israel against the Palestinians in Jerusalem, in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood, and in the West Bank, and by burning our children, and against the Gaza Strip through siege, murder, and starvation. The entire free world must put an end to those crimes. Yeah, that was the famous interview where he talks about George Floyd and says that it's white supremacy through and through, and it's the same kind of white supremacist attitude